Welcome to It's Personal, Finance Canada. I'm Christine Conway.
And I'm Cameron Conway.
And this podcast is a very personal look at personal finance in Canada. Welcome to It's Personal Finance Canada. I'm Christine Conway, here with Cameron Conway. And if you're in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, or the Yukon, feel free to find us at braunfinancial.com. This week, I found a really interesting academic article. And I mean, okay, maybe if you're me, you think academic articles are really fun and you read them all the time.
I can hear our engagement dropping by the second.
Well, you know what? People listen to this show so that I can do the back end work and they can reap the benefits of me spending all my free time nerding out to academic papers. This one in particular was written by a fellow named Gary Selnow in 2003. So it's a few years old, but it had some really, really interesting points about motivating retirement planning.
Well, I just want to hear someone whose last name was Selnow talk about finance.
Well, I don't know much about the guy. I didn't get into his background. I just kind of zeroed in on what he wrote. But he had some very, very good, organized and concrete points. So what we're going to do today is kind of take a walk through his article. And it was actually part of a larger work, but I'm going to zero in on what he did. And we're going to go through a lot of this as he presented it and fairly close to verbatim because he did the heavy lifting. He put in the research and, like I said, very well thought out. So right off the bat, it's kind of this sentiment that he's highlighting that this retirement savings is an absolutely huge task. It's monumental in nature, right? And a lot of it sets us up for failure by meeting certain criteria that he identified. So this thing that we all know that we need to do to benefit future us is very, very, very challenging. It's very hard. And a lot of us procrastinate. It's kind of like this great procrastination and we all do it and nobody talks about it. And it's kind of the last thing on our minds when we wake up in the morning, unless of course you're the kind of person like us who either works in the industry or listens to podcasts like this regularly.
Yeah, so the bulk of this is like why people don't retire. We'll just kind of jump to the end. Either you don't want to or you don't have the money. That's it, everyone. Like, subscribe, 5 stars. See you next week.
Well, yeah, and maybe it's not don't retire, but don't retire ready, right? Like most of us, when we conceptualize our retirement, when we think about it, we are thinking about this great vacation. That can be exciting, right? It can be this place that we see in our minds in this distant land called our future, but we can't fully conceptualize it because we have not yet had that daily experience. So we kind of look to other people's that have retired. We've looked at the ones that have retired successfully, but even that can feel like we're looking at someone else's highlight reel.
Yeah, what I was going to say is you can sweeten the pot a little bit and you could be this big, great vacation without your kids.
No, because the kids are grown and hopefully moved out of the house. We'll see how things go, right? It's tough out there all around these days. And I know that parents are feeling that need to support their kids to give them the best possible start, even if that takes maybe a little bit longer than traditionally. It is that much harder.
Yes, but today's episode, we're talking about you, yourself, and be a little bit selfish so you can kind of protect your future so you could have the opportunity to help them later on.
Absolutely. Well, and when you think about retirement, people think about it as that more free time, right? It's usually this separation from work. And what do people do with their free time? How do they tend to spend it? I mean, that's a very personal thing, but often in times it involves spending money. So retirement can kind of be this ultimate keep up with the Joneses, right? Because now not only are we watching someone else's highlight reel, but our neighbors, our friends, the people we're closest to are also experiencing maybe this great vacation or great vacation mindset. So all of this is good and well, but the challenge now is how do we motivate us today to get ourselves into that position that we're financially capable to live this highlight reel, to go on the vacations, to live the lifestyle, to enjoy that free time and have the cash flow to do it. And why does Gary Selnow in his paper from some time ago feel that we are in our very nature in a bit of a contradictory position when we look at our retirement savings?
Yeah, a lot of what the author kind of breaks down has to do with like desire and intention and knowledge and follow through. All of the great things we love to do on a regular basis, especially when it comes to saving money.
Oh my goodness. And to highlight that, I'm going to start off with a quote. Retirement savings advocates face one of the most daunting communication tasks imaginable. They seek to promote within the labor force a willingness to set aside scarce resources for some distant age that the worker may or may not reach, for rewards that the worker may or may not achieve at a price today that the worker may or may not wish to pay. This is a tough sell. However, recent research and an old theory lends some guidance and encouragement. And then he goes on to kind of present this, and we'll walk through the 7 things now that he identifies as being a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, a lot of this is that old notion of defer today so you can benefit tomorrow. I think we kind of lose track of this because even like 100 years ago, you could have a problem where you have a sack of wheat in your cellar. You can either turn into bread or you can turn that wheat into much more wheat. I think we've kind of lost sight of the whole grocery store notion of it just always there. But this is a same kind of issue and problem that people have had to deal with for a very long time. Do I delay this instant gratification today so I can have either bare necessity or even abundance in a future date?
Or you could let it ferment for a while and turn it into beer. Hopefully with good intention.
That's barley, not wheat.
Oh, no. See, and this is why I haven't made beer since like 2008? Oh, my goodness. All right. So back on track, I'm going to read another quote from the book. Investing for retirement is different from just about anything else people are asked to do. Along nearly every dimension, tucking away money today for a more secure tomorrow violates basic human inclinations. The savings is resistant to nearly all of the motivators we commonly use to encourage desired behaviors, which robs retirement planning advocates of the most useful and effective tools to stimulate wise investment decisions. So all of that to say is, guys, this is hard. We are asking you to do something that is contradicting your human nature.
But I want things now.
We are asking you to do things that benefit future you that, like he said, takes away from today.
But future me will solve the problem. Now me wants the thing.
Well, and that's how a lot of us approach retirement. And I've said in other shows, retirement should not be about age. It should be about readiness. Because if you put in the work, especially when you're young, and give your money the time to start working for you, my goodness, I'd rather have my money in an investment doing the heavy lifting for me than having to continually trade my time for money well beyond the period of years, chronological years, when I want to do this, right? So it's either setting up our mentality with the position of either I'm going to work hard for this, or I'm going to find a strategy that works for me and I'm going to invest and fulfill that strategy and get to the place where my money can now make money and I can go into this next period of my life prepared, regardless of how old I am at that time.
Yeah, we joke a lot about how we have that instant desire now, that inability or just very hard to defer things to later. But in Gary Selnow's paper, he kind of lists like 7 core things that people actually struggle with when it comes to getting that motivation, that desire, and that need for purpose to actually set aside money for later.
Well, yeah, and it's one thing when we're kind of running off observation, running off experience in the planning world, but it's another thing when you have an academic actually documenting the reasons why. And that's why I wanted to address this particular writing today. So let's dive into his 7 reasons. And again, this is going to be pretty close to verbatim from what he wrote, because don't break something that doesn't need fixing, right? Like if it's working, don't break it. So the first one is the payoff for behavioral change is quite uncertain. And he makes the point in his paper that saving for retirement is a gamble and you don't know what the outcome will be, right? Lots of things can go wrong. Markets can crash. People can pass away prematurely. There are so many things outside of our control that can change the outcome. So you can translate this into the idea or the hard reality that you can do all of the right things. You can save religiously. You can make the sacrifices. You can future plan, think about future you, try to meet their needs, and it can still go wrong. And that is hard and that is discouraging. And maybe this is why it's number one on the list, because that alone is a huge disincentive. If I'm going to sacrifice for an outcome that we don't know what it will be 20, 30, 40 years down the road, is it worth that risk to plan today?
Yeah, I guess you can kind of paraphrase Captain Picard here. It's possible to do nothing wrong, still lose, and that's just life.
It's so true though, right? And life is full of uncertainty and life is full of challenges. And you can argue that those are the events that make us stronger, but it's painful to gain that strength. It's painful to go through the circumstances that we need to develop the character. And a lot of this, I mean, we kind of just accept generally as, okay, we're adulting today. It's time to put on my responsibility shoes and just run this race that way. Whatever it is, we're trying to do the right thing, but it's easy to feel discouraged when you have the thought that this may not work out. There are too many things outside of my control.
Yeah, kind of like conceptually, we tell ourselves this is like a cause and effect thing. I put money into savings, I take this action, and my retirement will be all hunky-dory. But practically, we act like this is all just one big fiscal slot machine that we don't know if it's actually going to pay out or we're just going to get nothing at the end. This is how people behave, and this is what drives a lot of their motivation to not want to save.
Well, and investing by its nature can be very confusing, right? If you haven't learned the basics, if you're just getting into it now, people tend to avoid things that they don't understand. I mean, we don't want to look stupid. We don't want to look uninformed. And I think more importantly, we don't want that responsibility of making the wrong decision. So, I mean, that's why people will hire people, go to the bank, go to professional firms. They want that extra guidance for someone that has spent all day, every day kind of looking at this. But that fear of making a wrong decision, I feel, can also be a huge deterrent for a lot of people.
And this kind of flows into like the second point he brings up, that people have a hard time really buying into this idea that the future will be better off because of these good choices I'm making today.
Yeah, so he calls it workers do not easily buy into the idea of payoffs in the distant future. So this is another indication of our instant gratification society, right? Rather than being future thinkers, we're focused on today. And this can be very, very real. This can be very, very timely, especially for people that do not have the funds that they need today, or they're feeling strapped for cash because of inflation or because of a job loss. And I would think all of those are kind of secondary in this particular conversation. I think he's addressing more people that are gainfully employed at this point in time. But this idea of you are trading something today for something at a later point in time puts you in the position of feeling like you're giving something up now. And this actually flows really naturally into his third point, which is the promise of pleasure tomorrow means pain today. And think of just the way that sounds, right? Like if I'm already financially strapped and I am being told to set aside more money that I feel like I already don't have each month, that's going to be a sacrifice. That's going to cause pain for me because money solves problems. Money reduces stress in certain ways, and we all want lower stress. We all want ease in our lives. We all want things to be as smooth of a ride as possible. And depending on your life stage, right? Like if you're raising kids, if you're just buying your first home, if you're still in school, paying for that schooling, that retirement that you're saving for can feel like it's so far off that now you have to just focus on what I need today. And this is where today's bills, today's obligations can feel like they take precedent over all. And even not just the bills, the promise of something enjoyable. Like he says, pleasure over pain, right? Pleasure of tomorrow. That's something you can't quite feel today, so you kind of pull it back into today to try and experience as much of those good feelings now.
Yeah, and it could be also that people aren't expecting to have that good time in the future, or they're just so wrapped up in today that even just taking the time to think of it just seems like a foreign concept, or people are just unwilling to consider the possibility of change. Like I work this job every day, and then one day I won't, and then I'll figure things out down the road. There is just this lack sometimes to have the foresight of the possible change, and it could actually be a good one. Because if you see a good change coming, you'll want to make some sacrifices today. If you don't foresee a good change later, you just won't have nothing to do with that future, because today is all that matters when you have that mindset.
I think that's absolutely true as well. If you don't have that hope for a good future, if you don't believe that that good future is achievable to you, of course you'll make that trade of pleasure today, right? Because if I truly don't believe it's possible to get to my end goal of my dream retirement and all these vacations and the perfect life that I've envisioned, maybe I jump ship completely. I abandon the project and say, let it be what it'll be. Tomorrow we'll worry about tomorrow. Here I am living now. Let's live now. Now, of course, as a planner, I can see some problems, and we do see problems for people that do make these decisions where now they're living with the implications because the time has just flown by. But let's look at his fourth point, which ties into this exact same thought as well. That the wrong decision, and in this context, the wrong decision is not saving for retirement, yields instant gain. So this is truly like your Vegas slots win-lose, right? Like if I choose not to save, I spend that money, I enjoy it. Now I'm immediately rewarded. I get gratification today. I feel good today. I've enhanced my lifestyle today. And I can even say in my mind, I'm giving my kids the best I can today. I'm giving myself the best I can today. But again, he calls it the wrong decision in this context, in the sense that it will have an implication later on.
Yeah, and the implication might not just be for you. The implication could be for your entire family.
Well, yeah, and that's why as people get wealthier, as people increase their asset base, they start thinking about the next generation and the generations to come, because we all want standards of living to stay the same and increase over time. And that has become increasingly difficult without a little bit of help these days. So I feel that as people build their wealth and as they start to look towards the future, they start to do some of that future planning. But again, that in and of itself is counterintuitive. And to the author's fifth point, there is no immediate tangible reward. Yes, you feel like you've done the responsible things, but you don't have the status symbols today because you are choosing to forego some of that. So he makes the point that the reward link, he calls it the contingent reward link, is broken, because typically if you do a behavior and you want that behavior to continue, you have to feel good about it. And it's hard to have those feel good feelings when all that the reward is you telling yourself, I was responsible today. So I would say that's another hard reality. There's no current satisfaction from your savings today, except that little pat on the back, and no one sees it. It's not something that people readily talk about. It's not exciting. And I mean, when you're with your friends, they might look at the things that you have, where you live, what your lifestyle is, but they're certainly not looking at your bank account balance or your RSP balance or the saving level that you have for the future. So it's a bit of an invisibility problem too, where it's not readily, you don't see it, right? It's not readily visible in the same way as other material things that we can buy today are.
Yeah, it can be hard because there is that real desire to just want to just spend now, or just not want to think about the future, where you think, oh, someone else will just deal with this problem of the future for me later on. And yeah, it's that temptation that I'm just going to kind of spend away. Like we know, even with our own family, my own family, one of the reasons I'm just so gung-ho of just saving and preparation is that I've seen what happens when someone just doesn't want to save, doesn't want to prepare for retirement, just spends money frivolously with no worry or concern, and then it can leave the remaining family members after they're gone in a compromised position. This was what happened with my own dad, where he just spent wildly and just did what he wanted, didn't take care of the family. Then after he passed, left my mom in a compromised financial position because there wasn't this foresight. It was just the instant need to spend on this, spend on that, have this gratification, have that gratification, and left the future to work itself out. But it wasn't the future, it was everyone else that had to work out the problems.
Well, and I think that's a sad reality, right? Where it's putting that responsibility that should have been yours onto someone else. And then you're in the position of having to rely on the goodwill of other people or of family that might be in completely different life stages. And sometimes help comes, sometimes it doesn't, right? And to leave a loved one to the whims of someone else or to try and survive on their own when the assets have been dwindled, that is a very, very difficult position, not only for that person to find themselves in, but for the family as well, because then it becomes everyone's to work out. And not all families have that same mentality of wanting to help, right? Like there are some people that truly, as a result of bad decisions, find themselves alone in the world or relying on government support or relying on government institutional ways of kind of solving some of these societal difficulties that we can find ourselves in when there's a little bit of a lack of preparation. So to get back from that, these last 2 points, I think, are the most important because, yes, we all know the here versus now, that push-pull about gratification, but these last 2 points, I think, are the most important in the whole bunch. So number 6 is this: the saving decision can be postponed without any immediate penalty. This is huge. And when I was reading this, in my mind, I thought this is a myth of no consequence. We are believing that there is no consequence for our action. We are believing that I can postpone this and future me will deal with it tomorrow. But the reality is tomorrow never comes. We push it and we push it and we push it until we find ourselves in a position where we are standing in the place that we thought was the distant future.
Yeah, the closest thing you have to deal with is probably just your bank teller harassing you to put more money into your savings.
Well, and I don't think they even do that as much these days, right?
Oh, they got their quotas to fill.
Well, people are left to their own devices as much as possible. But the fact that you can make that active decision without any penalty, any immediate implications, you can postpone, you can defer, you can make it a tomorrow problem. It does not cause you pain now. Oh man, that is hard. And like I said, the myth of no consequence is a myth because there actually are consequences. You just don't feel them until later. And in the future, how many times have we seen a situation where someone loses their capacity to save? I mean, it could be economic conditions that change, where there's a forced retirement or job loss, layoffs, economic factors that have driven them. It can be as personal as health changes, where someone now does not have that same ability to work to the same level, either physically or mentally, that they did prior. And for whatever the reason, the ability to save in the future can be diminished. And that can directly impact your standard of living later. So we kind of have to look at it like that and not just as a today problem. So it's this idea that your actions today, this might be it. This might be what future you has to rely on. And by making it a problem for tomorrow, you do not yet know what capability or capacity future you will have. And of course, we hope it's good, but life is a wild card. And the last one, and this one is great as well. This one really resonated with me as someone who loves goal setting in financial planning. The author points out that there are no functional deadlines. And this, in my mind, is why any goal fails. You don't tell yourself how much, you don't tell yourself where you're going to put it, you don't have a strategy going in, and you don't have a timeline of when this will be done by.
Yeah, I think the closest thing you can really find with this is like the annual RRSP deadline, but that's just more of a gentle reminder of, hey, if you have money, if you have an RRSP, maybe put some money over there, but there is no like firm kind of kick in the backside to actually stick to the goals, to actually put some money in the right place, to actually prepare for retirement. It is just a lot of vague generalities that a lot of people know, but have probably just become numb to.
Well, and it's not like any other bill, right? The bills are immediate. The bills are in your face today, demanding action, or the vacation you want to take, or the activity that your kid wants to do. Those all have functional deadlines. But this concept for retirement planning that it does not have a functional deadline, I mean, really, like you said, Cam, what are the gut checks? It might be age. It might be, oh, I'm 50 now. I'm 55. I wanted to retire. I'm 60. Now maybe I should do something, but you've robbed yourself the time in the market. You've robbed yourself those years of saving. You've robbed yourself the ability to take something small and let it become something bigger. And that time is so valuable. And that's why we always encourage people to look at the plan today, look at the direction you're going, and think about retirement savings as any other goal that has to be measurable. It has to be specific. It has to have a deadline, and it has to have a dollar commitment where you're putting real money on the line. So don't fall into this myth of time. Don't fall into this myth of thinking that you have all the time in the world, that the problem occurs in the distant future, or that you can deal with it later. Like I said, all of that robs future you. And man, oh man, if I can have my money work for me versus me doing the work, like I said earlier, that is a much better trade. So having a strategy to get to the point where your assets can grow to the size where that's a capability, it's going to solve a lot of problems for you. And the author pointed out a little bit later in the paper that when we're young, we feel immortal. We haven't yet had these hard reality checks that you get later in life. And that can be something like a health change or the loss of a loved one, anything that convinces you that your time here is finite. So I wanted to read a quote from this article, which says, and I quote, "On top of all this, most young people are firmly convinced that they will always be young. Belief in one's immortality is a mighty force, and peer pressure is scarce. Discussions about financial preparations for retirement do not arise spontaneously around the water cooler, and friends do not pressure one another about retirement set-asides."
So you're saying then that good friends will always push you to save into your retirement fund? That has not happened to me yet.
It hasn't happened to me either, even though I'm in this industry. Well, no, but it's, this could be a whole other thing, right? Surrounding yourself with people that are also building momentum. Surrounding yourself with friends, with family, with people that are good influences that are also hustling and working towards a similar outcome. Those are the kind of people that could have stimulating conversation with you about not a savings plan, that sounds boring, but about the future that you could create for yourself once you fulfill these things. And that's what savings is really about. It's not only about the sacrifice today, but it's about the benefit of tomorrow. And the benefit is having access to something that you would not otherwise have access to in lifestyle, in choices. And of course, there's a safety net. I mean, we live in a society today where there's government benefits. There are ways that money will continue to flow if there is no savings done, but those are limited resources, right? Like the government benefits available today are limited. So you can find yourself with a lack of choice at a time when time has multiplied and money is in small supply, and that limits choice. So you can feel more limited in that scenario. And like we said, family, maybe they step in, maybe they don't, but that's a lot of pressure that you're putting on other people.
Well, we spent the last 20 or so minutes talking about the problems, establishing our thesis, doing all the good things you're supposed to do as an academic. Let's actually get into the last 2 minutes where you actually get a quick solution.
Cam actually has a master's degree and actually is an academic, so that's why that giant winky face was hilarious, in my opinion. Okay, so what do we actually think about this? This is where I'm going to get a little bit controversial because I fully understand and am sensitive to the fact that not everybody will have the capability to do this. And if you find yourself in a position where you can't, your goal should be increasing your ability to earn, increasing your skill set, increasing your advantages in life so that you can later have more money coming in so that you can. So what is the solve in my mind? My mind what we need to do is build a lifestyle for ourselves that we enjoy, that in its nature deducts from it the percentage of our income that we need to save for later. So every person is going to have a savings rate that they will need to be able to go into retirement prepared. And that savings rate will be based on a number of personal things like benefits at work, could be a pension plan or a defined contribution, could be a potential inheritance, it could be hard assets or the lack thereof. But every person's savings rate is going to be different.
Yeah, and one of the big things that can help is just to automate everything. Treat this just like a tax. You're essentially paying your own future tax to future self to make sure future self can pay tomorrow's bills.
I like the tax analogy a lot because we all give big percentages of our income to the CRA anyways. Whether you're a salaried employee or self-employed, you're basically having to set aside or through regular remittances, you're sending to the CRA the tax money in a lot of cases ahead of time. And that's just kind of the cost of living in this country to fund all of these things as we need to do as we pay our taxes. But we are used to living on less. We are used to that net. So if you build in your savings rate and create a new net for yourself, which is really just a continuation of the pay yourself first mindset, where you've identified what you need and then you take it out of your budget ahead of time. And Cam, I love that idea of automation. It works incredibly well in practice. It's getting that money that future you will need out of the equation completely and living on the rest as if it is all that you have. Is this difficult for most of us to achieve? Absolutely yes. Is it a sacrifice? Certainly, because you know that you're now redirecting dollars to the future. Is it impossible? For most of us, no. For some of us, yes, we do have to make other changes to our financial situation to be able to try this. But when we do it, we learn something. We learn to adapt. We learn that we can budget differently. We can think about our spending patterns differently. We can think about our entertainment differently. And we can think about our future self. And we can basically say, this is how I give not only myself a good future, but my kids as well. Because if I have a higher asset base, there's a greater likelihood that some of that will be passed on to the next generation, setting them up for success. So especially if you had it hard or you've had to do it all yourself, if you can now be in the position to set up the next generation by good choices today, that's a huge win because it is getting harder going forward. So my final advice on this is kind of to automate that savings rate as much as possible. Use tax advantaged accounts as much as possible. Find out what that percentage should be for you, and then create a plan that makes it happen month by month, bi-weekly, whatever the frequency is. Get that money out of your account, working towards your future, and ultimately setting yourself up for success. So that's how we saw this very brief, that we kind of extrapolated on quite a bit, paper by Gary Selnow. And I hope that some of his psychology and some of his reasoning behind why we don't save enough for our retirements resonated with you. And hopefully the practical tips at the end can help you a little bit as well. And if you're in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, or the Yukon, and you need some help, feel free to find us at braunfinancial.com. Until next time, take care.
And all the best.